Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. I have a fun little project today that I hope you guys like. I'll be combining the moss pole with the wood plank, and then I'll be adding a Mandula pothos cutting from my perlite prop box. So I'm going to show you how to set this up and how to add a cutting on a plank. So let's get started. I just want to start off by saying I cannot take credit for this idea. I talk to a guy on Instagram quite often about planks, and he told me that there's a video out there of someone putting moss on the plank, and I just want to see if there's any benefit to combining the two methods. Obviously, moss poles and planks are completely different. Moss poles, the roots grow into the moss, so it's basically an extension of the growing medium, whereas the plank, the plant roots will latch on to the plank. It's more of a support system, but both methods just train the plant to grow up and get more mature leaves. So I just want to see if there's any benefit to adding moss. Maybe that can just keep the plank a little bit more moist at times. So I'm just going to try this out and see if there's any noticeable difference between the two methods. I do have a little helper today. Nobody else is home and Pickles has not been in any videos for a while. So she's brought me her little toy as I set up for my planks and stuff. Hey, you haven't been in any videos for a while. Oscar and Zoe are getting their hair cut today and everyone else is away. So just doing some little projects, but she just wants to play. If you watch my channel for any length of time, you know that I like to repurpose any wood that I can find. This is from my garage. So these are just pine planks, and I cut this one in half. It was an 8-foot board, and it looks like it's what, maybe half an inch, maybe an inch thick here. Pine is not ideal. I like to place my planks inside the pot. It's just much easier to water the plank. If you have it on the outside of the pot and you try and water the plank, then you better have a large saucer or tray or something, because the water will obviously drain outside the pot. So I like to put them in the pot. Now, one of the questions I get commonly is, am I worried about rot? And no, I'm not. Here is a smaller plank that I had in a container. I'm not even sure for how long, but it was quite a long time. I'm thinking probably close to like 10 months or even a year, and there's no rot. There's a little bit of staining on it, but it's not rotten. The plant will probably outgrow the plank before it rots. If you are worried about rot, then you can use cedar, and I'm going to show you something else here as well. Here is a decorative trellis. It has some plastic coating on the little feet here, so if you're worried about rot, then use like a Flex Seal or something just on the bottom portion or the lower portion that will be in the pot. I've been soaking this moss for probably about 10 minutes so far. This stuff was absolutely bone dry, so I just want to make sure that it absorbs all of the water and it is not in that hydrophobic state. I'm going to be using this terracotta pot, and I don't want there to be any moss on the lower portion of the plank, which is in the pot. So I'm just going to roughly measure with this bamboo skewer and then mark it on the plank somewhere around here, and that way I can add the moss from this portion up, so it'll just be sticking out of the pot. Now that the moss has been soaking here for a while, I'm just going to take it out of the container. I'm just going to squeeze it just so all the water is squeezed out of it, just so nothing is dripping. It is still damp, but not kind of that soaking or sopping wet. I'll be securing the moss by two methods. I'm going to staple some of this on, and then I'll go around after and then just kind of wrap it up. Hopefully that keeps the moss on the plank. So I'm just going to add kind of a light layer, just a little ways up, just making sure it's flat, and then I will just take my stapler and let's see if this actually holds it on. It should, because the moss are just little strands. As long as the strands are underneath, then it should, well, most of it remained on there. The twine should hold on the rest afterwards. So I'll just keep going up the moss or the plank with the moss here, filling in some of those areas. Every once in a while, I'm just going to tip it upside down just to see if any of it falls off. Actually, this is going much better than I thought it was. I thought a lot of the moss would just fall right off. If you don't like the moss dangling off the edges afterwards, and you can just snip it off with a pair of scissors or a pruning shear or something like that and just clean it up. But I think I'm actually going to like the way this looks. Make sure you have your stapler this way as you're going up so that there is more staple in contact with the moss, if that makes sense. Everything for the most part is staying in place. I don't know if I'm gonna go all the way up the plank for right now. I might as well, but now I'm going to use the twine to wrap up the rest of the loose moss. And I just want to say I've never done this before, so I'm not saying run out and try this method. This is simply an experiment for me. I just want to see how the plant adapts to this moss and the plank. I'm not saying that this is the best of both worlds. I'm simply trying this out and just seeing how it goes. So I'm just going to take my twine and I'm going to make a little knot at the bottom of the plank. And I'm just going to flip that around and add a staple. Come on. I'm just going to flip that around to the back. And I'm just going to staple it in place. And again, I want that above the soil as well. I'm just going to add a staple right there, just so it doesn't move around and migrate. Maybe one up top here as well, just to kind of hold that in place. Now I'm just going to, I don't even know how I'm going to do it without getting my hands in the way. I'm just going to wrap it around the plank. Maybe I'll just twist it like this. Hopefully all the moss doesn't fall off. And I'm just going to rotate it around, and I can add more moss if I need to. I can staple it on and see there's some falling off already. So if you know me and my thoughts about moss, I particularly don't like moss for the fact that it's super messy. I'm not sure if I'm going to like this method or not. One of the things that I want to see is if the moss just falls off over time as it gets dry. But like I said, this is an experiment, time will tell. I'm just going to go up the plank and then I'll come back in the opposite direction. I have a bunch of moss on the floor here, so I'm not a fan of that. I do have a few bare areas that I'm noticing already. So the stuff that is stuck with the staples is obviously in place. Now I'm just going to crisscross it this way and come back down to where I began. And then obviously I'll have to replace all the moss that has fallen off in those areas. So I'm keeping it nice and tight. Okay, now at the bottom here, whoops, scraping off all the moss at the top. I'm just going to wrap it around a couple times just at the bottom, and then I will tie a knot like that. And overall it looks pretty good. There's a bare area right here and there's some at the top, but overall I'm pretty impressed. And just tie a knot and then I will staple that in place as well. Let's staple that. Secured. Cut off the excess. Get some of the moss, put it on those areas, staple it on. I think maybe a little bit down here. Okay, that. Give her a few more. Okay, there's a lot of moss on the floor over here. And it's not like the big bulky moss portions that I dislike. It's all like the really fine little tiny flakes that eventually just fall off the moss poles and stuff that I don't like. Okay, let's fill up the stapler. Went out to Home Depot and bought these this morning. I was fresh out. Okay, fill in these bare spots. It's all jammed up with moss. I'm not too sure how I'm gonna like this. I'm gonna try it out and I'll definitely make some videos down the road. But here is, without hitting the roof, the moss plank. I'm just gonna shake that off a little bit. Okay, I think it's probably gonna be pretty messy. But it doesn't, there's just a couple more bare spots right here. Yeah. We'll give it a try. Okay, completed. Let's put the plant on it and see how it does. Now I'm just going to show you all the cool stuff that I got in my perlite prop box. Here is my Mandula pothos cutting. Come on. It's been rooting in here for a few weeks. It's got some nice roots, so I'll be putting that on the plank like that. I recently did an anthurium propagation video. Here's what the leaf looks like now. It's just on a little stem portion. It doesn't look like it has any roots yet, but look at that leaf. It's absolutely perfect. This is the Quermalence. I do have another one right here as well. Again, cute little leaf. This has gone exceptionally well in the perlite prop box. I have a bunch of alocasiacorms. I believe these are all the black velvet, because here's a little baby black velvet right there. Got a nice little root system, so that's how they grow. Push out some roots and the cutest little leaf. I have a bunch of those. Here are some Epiprenum pinnatum. These are the yellow flame. The leaves, they're dying off, but it's definitely started to grow. This one has 2 leaves, nice little root system. I don't know what I'm going to be doing with those yet. I have a couple of Anthurium regale chunks. I had one growing off of this. I sliced it off. I'm going to see if it will regrow from that growing eye. Here's a couple alocasia fried egg bulbs and just some more of those epiprenums. Here is half a dozen, maybe more, Melanochrysum wet sticks, and you can see they're all getting some new growth. So I'm excited about that. Oh, here's a tiny little leaf. Tiny, tiny. Here is an Aglaonema pictum tricolor. This one got some rot, and it looks like it's starting to get some new roots. So I cut these back. See if I can get them to propagate. Here's a new little growth point coming along. Now I just want to show you quickly, when I put the pot over the plank, you can see how off my measurement was with the top of the pot. So I'm going to have to make a correction, because when I place, I'm just going to do it like this. When I place the plant on the plank, I want to make sure that I know where the top of the pot is. So because this is the top of the pot right here, I'm going to have this node just slightly below that, and obviously this leaf will be below the soil line. So I'm going to cut this leaf off just like that, and I'll have the cutting positioned roughly like that. So these roots will be underneath the soil. They'll be developing a root system to sustain future growth. And then the area roots that will be in contact with the moss and the board up here will produce those stabilizing roots. Before you attach your cutting on the plank, you want to make sure that you have it in the right direction. So you can see on the back side of the cutting, there are some roots, and then there are these little bumps, area roots. These are what you want in contact with the wood plank. So something like that. There should be no little area roots facing outwards. You want them in contact with the wood. So this is the correct orientation. I'm just going to put it to the depth right now. And any new growth, there will be a new node from right up here that will produce its own area roots in time. So that's why I want these 2 nodes underneath the soil. They'll be establishing, you can see they're already soil roots. They're not area roots anymore. These will be producing a root system sustainable for new growth. So all I'm going to do is add this plant wire just on the front of the stem above the soil. I'm going to push that down, and then I'm just going to wrap it around just like this, and then I'll twist it at the back on the back side. Just kind of give it a little bit of a twist, just temporarily. You can adjust it afterwards. It might be tough to see, but there is a very definitive line right there. So it's kind of darker green, and then there's a line, and that is a lighter green portion, or the petiole of the leaf. This is the next node. This is where the aerial roots are going to develop and form. So that is what you want to have in contact with the wood. Here is my golden pothos, or golden Hawaiian. You can see all the aerial roots are latched onto the plank there. So it is extremely satisfying seeing how secure these are on the plank. Here's another one where you can see those aerial roots. They act like little feet, kind of anchoring the plant to the board. And you can see here as well, here's that node, the color change. You can see here's a leaf petiole and then the stem. So that's what to look for, and that's what you want in contact with the wood. Now that the cutting is attached to the plank, hopefully I don't hit the roof here, I can position it in the pot, and then all you have to do is add soil. So you can see, looks like the cutting is positioned where I want it. Now all I have to do is mix up some soil. I'm using a combination of tropical plant potting mix and then some orchid bark, and there's some perlite in here as well. I want the plank seated or sitting on the bottom of the pot. There's no soil in here right now. And then I'm simply just going to fill in the, Dusty, should be wearing a mask. Just filling in the soil in the front and the back, just because I want the plank to remain upright. Okay, here's the finished product. I think it looks pretty cool. Actually, it just looks like a hairy piece of wood. I'm just gonna come in here just to show you the close-up positioning of the plant. This is the node that had the root. It's gonna grow down into the soil. And here is the area where the new node is gonna produce some aerial roots, and those will latch on to the plank, hopefully, and then it'll continue to climb up the wood plank. Now I'm gonna use my spray bottle to wet this soil, and that way it'll settle it a little bit better in the pot, and that way it won't be so wobbly. This one is really top heavy because normally I use a 3-foot tall plank. This one is 4 feet, so it's a little extra wobbly. So I'll have to be careful with that when placing it with the rest of my planks. Gonna let that drain through. You want a really well draining soil. And I'm gonna water the back here as well, just to, again, help settle that soil, fill in any air gaps if there is any. And that way it can kind of stabilize and solidify that plank in the upright position, and that way it doesn't fall out of the pot, because I have had them fall out before. So just packing that down. So I think that's gonna be pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you think of this new moss plank contraption, and if you've ever used it before, I'd love to know your experience with it. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. I appreciate all the support. Take care, everyone. Bye.